Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today is an emotional show. Let me tell you what emotional show means today. Imagine being married, male or female, being married, and to be betrayed during this encounter of holy matrimony. I couldn't imagine it, me personally. But let's talk about the devastation that it can have on an individual, the impact that it can have on a family, the impact that it causes emotionally. Today, we have on the show, all the way from Colorado, a young lady that has taken her pain and turned it into a mission of healing, recovery, and becoming stronger. Definitely showcasing that beast mindset. I'd like to welcome to the show Angela Tobler to the show, all the way from Colorado. Angela, welcome to the show, baby girl. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Wow, pre-interview was crazy. This sounds your story sounds like something from definitely a serious Dallas dynasty, Knox Landing, Hayden Place,
Yes.
the whole
It
nine yards.
some drama TV show, yes.
Yeah. Before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about you before we get into your story.
Just me in general. I am 39 years old. I have 4 children. I created this business a little under a year ago. But it's been something ever since it happened that I knew I wanted to do it. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's my mission. I am married again. I have remarried. So we have now the process of trying to blend a family and come together in that way, but that's kind of a little bit of the rundown of who I am.
Okay. So let's go to the beginning. You fall in love with a young man, you get
Mhm.
married. Tell me what that was like.
Okay, so this is a good story. I met a young boy. See, this is going to be the shocking part. I was 18 years old when I met him. And I fell head over heels for him immediately. And the reason I did is because he made me feel amazing. I felt like I was the only woman in the whole world that existed. I felt seen, I felt valued, I felt beautiful, and he made me feel that way. And I fell in love with the way he made me feel. Now, looking back, I understand that now. But at the time, I thought it was true love. I thought it was everything that I had ever been looking for. And so once I turned 19, we got married and started our journey together.
Let's go back a little bit
Okay.
because as we move forward, this will make sense.
Okay.
You used the word trauma in the pre-interview. We want to talk
hmm
about that now. So let's go back a little bit. What was it like for
Okay.
you as a child? Because you said he made you feel special. He made you feel beautiful. He made you feel all of these validations.
hmm
What was it like? Were these things lacking in your childhood development?
That's a really good question. And it actually took me a lot of introspective and digging into to discover that. Because on paper, I had a wonderful childhood. My
Mhm.
parents are still together to this day. They're kind, loving people, they're God-fearing people. They taught me really well. I had everything I could have needed or wanted,
Mhm.
but I did have form of trauma that I created from things that happened. I was the youngest of five. So I was 3 years younger than my next sibling, 8 years younger than that, and then 10 to 11 years from there. So there was big gaps that I was kind of somewhat sensed like an only child. But at that point, I grew up with this sense of self that I didn't matter, that I was annoying, that I was irritating, and that the best thing that I could do was be invisible. And I learned how to do that at a very young age, that I didn't want to create problems. I didn't want to, make things difficult, and that I knew and was very told very often that I was annoying.
Really?
So I would shut down a lot. And so I created this place where I needed to please, particularly my mother. It started there that I tried to please her, and I did that by being smaller, by being as inconvenient as I possibly could be. And that was where I kind of had that sense of that I needed to make myself less seen, less of a problem. And it created a place where, but I valued and I wanted to be seen a lot. So that was that discontent within myself.
When when the guy came into the picture and all of these emotions
Mhm.
started to manifest itself and you felt comfortable, how quickly did you get married because you wanted because you still carried that trauma, I guess that's what you would call it, um,
Mhm.
into that? Did you feel that was an scapegoat for you? Even though you said he showed you all of these things, was there a part of you because you wanted to be this microscopic piece in the family and not be the trouble or the
Mhm.
burden? Did you feel that because he gave you this was an opportunity for you to leave that part of your, let's call it what it is, that trauma?
Mhm. Absolutely. It was my turn to like finally be important to somebody or feel important. Not that I wasn't important,
Mhm.
because again, I don't have any blame on anybody in my family. They really did. My parents did the best that they knew and had capable of.
Mhm.
Trauma is all about how we perceive it. So it was all just how I internalized everything. But it was like my place to finally step into the main character of
Mhm.
my story. And I got to be the the most important person to somebody else. That's what I wanted. That's what I always wanted my whole life.
Okay, so you follow the, I call it the Disney story. There's
Yep.
Cinderella, there's Snow White,
Oh
there's
yeah.
um, all of these stories have a underlining effect. You have
Yep.
uh, Beauty and the Beast, where she falls in love with the capture guy that's not, and so forth. We won't get into the trilogy of all these different women and what they're longing for. So you get married at a young age. What was that like? We hear stories that you never should have got married when you was young. You never should have did this. Never. What was it like for you?
So, I mean, it was tough. And I kind of said he was young too. He was 21. I was 19. And we kind of just grew up together. Like we were just very immature in general. So we had that very much of a basis. But looking back, I don't think that was necessarily the problem of our relationship. It was the fact that it wasn't that we were physically young, it was that we were emotionally immature. And both of us had come with different traumas and different things that we didn't even know and understood that we had. So that was what was more of the problem is I thought he was going to fix all my hurt and wounds that I'd had my whole life. And I think he thought the same thing. And we weren't able to do that for each other. And
What was
that's
his?
really what was the underlining problem.
What was his fix?
So, I mean, the truth is he had more of the textbook trauma life. His biological father walked out of his life when he was 2 years old, and he never knew him. Until recently, I guess they've kind of reconnected. Then his mom got remarried to a man that adopted him and raised him and took care of him. But then they got divorced, and his mom got remarried again to an abusive man that she had another child with. And and so he grew up in a home that was very unsteady and abusive and hard. So home life was, he tried to escape home life as much as he could. So I think, I mean, just from the side of, I think he was looking to find love and in that same place of like, what does a good home look like? But he had no model of that before.
When you get married, what were some of the signs that you guys were seeing at both a young age, and how were you able to really process what you don't know, even though you see um flags, so to speak, but you don't even know that they're
Yeah.
flags because at that age,
Yeah.
what were some of those things that was surfacing?
So the truth is we didn't know, yeah, we didn't know there were red flags and we didn't know how to work them through. And so my go-to was I will try to be the best wife that I possibly can. And I will try to be not annoying and not because I didn't want to be that. That was my biggest fear is that I didn't want to be that annoying, nagging wife. Like I was like, nope, so I would shove my feelings down of if I felt that there was problems or issues. And the other problem was when I ever did bring them up, he wouldn't want to address them. So he wasn't wanting to talk about anything or fix anything. He just wanted it to be better. So I had to I slowly learned that I had to just shove it down. I couldn't work through anything.
What were some of
He
the
wasn't really
what were some of the things that you had to dummy down? Because I think the viewers at a young age need to know this. Like, what were some of the things that you had to
so
dummy down instead of being able to address? Because I think what happens is young people get married and fail to realize you're now an adult. You got to pay bills. You did you have
right.
kids at that time? If there's kids involved, there's a lot of things that are in play now. But what were some of the things you had to swallow because you were still bringing in to this relationship, this marriage, the same concepts of thinking that you had when you was with your
Right.
mom and dad?
Yeah. So one of the biggest ones that I truly remember that it had nothing to do with him and I had one of my very best friends had struggled with having children. It was like, and I was with her that whole journey, and she finally got pregnant, and then she was going into delivery. And in this process, I didn't hear it from her. Somebody else that I wasn't that close to at the time had been like, "Oh, so and so's having her baby," and I was like hurt by the fact that I didn't hear it straight from her. So I was expressing this pain to my now ex-husband, and I was saying that like I feel hurt that like she didn't reach out to me. Like I thought we were really close and that she didn't want to tell me herself that now she told so and so and that they told me. And in that moment, he turned to me and said that I was a terrible person, that it's not about me, and that I'm a bad friend for even considering my feelings in the process. And I was really shocked by that because I was like, I then had to question myself of I'm like, am I a bad person? Am I a bad friend for having these feelings?
Mhm.
And I thought I was. So then I had to then swallow those feelings because it made me feel like I was a bad person for even feeling them, for even considering the fact that I wanted to be important to someone that was important to me. And so it was that process of that I had to swallow those types of things that wasn't safe for me to feel or think or even do. So
How long were you guys married before it really started to you that things really started to change for the worse?
honestly, on our wedding day. So before we got married, while we were dating and engaged, it was the whole process that I was the most important thing. He did and just doted on me. He made me feel important, and it was all about like whatever I wanted, kind of a thing. Um, then when as the day we got married, he shifted and he said, "We're no longer doing XYZ." And it just kind of like, okay.
What do you mean
And it's
XYZ? What's XYZ?
so it started with we were living near, like not near, but like we were like 40 minutes away from my family and my parents, and they wanted to have Sunday dinner. And not every single week, but often. And on my wedding day, my mom asked, she's like, so you guys gonna come, to Sunday dinner after your honeymoon or whatever? And he said, no, we will not be doing that anymore. And it was not a discussion with me. He just blatantly said it. And so it was that beginning that I had to then have this battle between how do I work this? And again, my mom, who's a great, beautiful, wonderful woman, but she's very strong and she's very type A person. She gets what she wants, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And I'd always been trying to please my mom my whole life. And now my husband and my mom were in a competition with each other, and I had to choose sides, basically. And so I made a choice to choose my husband, and that then caused a little bit of some tearing between my mom and I. We've repaired and we're totally good, but it was hard, and my mom had a hard time with the relationship. And because I had to say no, but I didn't want to. So she'd ask me, she'd press and be like, hey, are you guys going to come do this? Blah, 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 or whatever it is, some kind of family gathering or asking us to come over. And I'd either say yes, sure, we'll come because we didn't have any plans. And then I'd say, hey, we're going to go do this with my family and my parents. And he'd get so angry. He's like, why are we doing this? I don't want to do this. Or he would go and let me know that he was not happy that we were there. So it just became this tearing where I was trying to please him and not upset him and my mom at the same time. And it just was this really tug of war and battle for me.
What
For,
did your mom and dad say about it? Because let's get real. You're now
yeah,
married. You're now married. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
right.
How did they help you to navigate?
So that was the hard part, is because my mom is one, as wonderful as she is, she doesn't always love to address the difficult things. So she was never angry about it, but she just couldn't understand why. So she'd always press, well, why? Well, what's happening? And I didn't want to say, well, my husband doesn't want to go. So that's why, because I didn't want there to be this rift between the two of them. But no answer was ever satisfying to her, because the one quality, my mom is really great, is that she will bend over backwards to make things work. So if there's a problem that presents in front of her, she will find a solution to make it work. So she's always asking, well, what's the problem? And I can kind of make this work. But she does have a little bit of problems with boundaries. If you say, no, we're not going to do that, she's like, well, how can I get around that? How can I, navigate through that? So that was a little bit of the difficult part, that she tried her best to respect us in what she knew how, but she was always pressing of like, well, why? Why can't you come? Why can't you do this? All these things.
You talked a lot about your mom. What about your father?
So my dad is like, my dad's just the biggest sweetheart, but the interesting thing is, at least when I talked to my older siblings, I had a different father than my older siblings did. And it was because he became very submissive to my mom. And he made a decision at some point before I was born that it wasn't important enough to like fight through things. He kind of just submitted to her and her will. And so he's come to this place where he doesn't argue, he doesn't make a big deal. He kind of just lets my mom be and do who she wants to do. And so he's just very submissive to that. So he's not confrontational and he doesn't want to make things hard. And so he just kind of sits back in the
How,
sidelines.
how does that make you feel knowing what you just gone through, which we'll get into in a minute? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's hard because I think that it's very different. I had this picture that a good marriage was that the man was submissive, but learning that I'm like, it should be the other way around traditionally. I don't know. I'm one that I think that the masculine has a very protective and formula, like this high, I don't know how to really explain it, but that is their role. And women have a different, more nurturing aspect. And so I kind of, my heart breaks a little bit that my dad, I think, lost a lot of his masculinity with my mom, that he had to forego a lot of things that make him a man and his identity
Mhm.
for the sake of the marriage and the family.
Let's move forward. Let's get into the real nitty gritty. You've been married
Okay.
to this guy. Evidently, there's been
Mhm.
some up and downs, but your children, are they all by him? So
Yes.
you have four children by him. So
Yes.
then you encounter betrayal.
When
And
did what was that question?
I said, then you encounter the most horrible word you can think of to a
Yes.
woman, and that's called
Yes.
betrayal.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the betrayal and how it came about.
So the betrayal was very blindsiding to me. Because like the dynamics, I had to learn that he didn't want to hear, my feelings or what was hard. So that had to be shut down. That was pretty much the whole marriage. And so I had to just work around him, like I just adapted. But with the four children, I wasn't responsible for everything. I was responsible for taking care of them, for taking care of the home, paying the bills, getting everyone where they needed to go, shopping, like everything there. He was responsible for making the money. So he provided the money. I was a stay-at-home mom. And then I kind of took care of everything else. So we had this place that we kind of made it work, but I was struggling and I needed help and I needed a partner. And we'd had our like that throughout our whole marriage, but I reached a point where we were very distant. And I had been trying for a year. Like I planned a whole anniversary trip and trying to have ways to connect, and it just wasn't happening. So we sat down one day and I said, I need you here. I need you here to like work with me. We need to work. Like I need you to like try and do something. And I say this way because it was the most devastating to me that he turned to me and said, I don't know if I want to. And I couldn't understand it because how could you be with somebody for 14 years, have four children with them, and you didn't even want to try to make it better? That didn't make any sense to me. So I then decided that we should separate, that if he's not sure that he wants his family, that he can't play house. Like, so he needed to move out until he knew what he wanted, until he could decide to choose us, to choose me. And so we separated. He moved out. And about 3 months later, I discovered that he had been engaging in an affair 6 months prior. So it had been about 9 months that total by the point that I found out about the affair that it had been going on.
There
And
were
it
no
started
signs
innocently.
or nothing in the household that, you say distance, but you've been with him for 14 years. I mean,
Yeah,
wasn't there signs? I mean, was the love life good? I mean, usually there's signs that
you're right.
somebody's getting bored with somebody. For 14 years, you had to have seen something.
Yeah. But it had been the title of our whole marriage. I had been asking for him to come home. Like for instance, like these are the things I asked him to come home 2 times a week by 6:30 so he could eat dinner with us, and he couldn't do that. The thing is he would take off at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I usually wouldn't see him until about 8 o'clock at night after the kids had gone to bed. And when he would come home, he would then maybe go to the gym for a little while. Or he'd like want to decompress and don't go do his own thing. So even though he'd come home, he wasn't engaging in the home life at all. And when I asked him to, he actually would disappear further. He'd show up later at night. If I'd call him and say, I've had a really hard day, can you please come home earlier to help me? He wouldn't come home until 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so I had to learn to just do it by myself and figure it out by myself. So that was like our dynamic. And before I discovered the affair, we had gotten in a really, really low place where I was about ready to say, I'm done with this because you won't help me. And I was personally in a very, very low place. And
When you
I
say,
then started,
not to cut you off, when you say you was in a very low place and you're done with this, were you just done with the fact that you was sick and tired of taking care of the kids while he was, or did he feel like because he brought home the bacon, your job is to do the kids?
yeah.
So what did you want to do? Did you want to go out and get a job? I mean, what roles did you want him to really play?
I wanted him to be more engaged in the home. I wanted him to come home and actually participate in home life as well, because I never got a break. And I wanted to be there because my kids were little. I wanted to be like a part of everything, but it was hard and it was exhausting. And I needed just a little bit of some like help and support in it. And that's what I wanted.
Did you
But I
guys do
wasn't.
did you guys do family things? I mean, 14 years of marriage. Did you guys go to Disneyland? Did you go back to your mom and dad's for Sunday's dinner? I mean, or did he just basically go to work for 14 years and you guys didn't do anything together as far as a family structure?
We would only if I planned it. So if I took care of everything, he would go. So yes, I did plan a trip to Disney once and things, but it had to be I had to be prepared to do it on my own. And then if he felt like it, he'd come. But I couldn't ask for his help or support. But like our Disney trip, I had to plan the whole thing and he just showed up. He just came along. So he was my fifth child in essence. Um, but so that was where it came from that like when I was in a not very good place, I started to get resentful for this and I felt low physically, low mentally, spiritually. I felt really, really low. And he wasn't somebody I could lean on to get up, and I wanted him to be. And that's where like it just bubbled down to get this like place. And then I finally started to decide that I wanted to live a different life. I wanted to be happy. So I started to work on me and I actually became the happiest I had ever been our whole marriage when he had his affair.
Really?
So oh, sorry.
No, so his infidelity made you feel happy? Explain that. I'm trying to understand. It's like you would be
No, no. I personally, like, I started working on myself.
okay.
And while I didn't know what he was doing, but to help me feel happier, I stopped asking for his help. And if I wanted to do it, I was going to do it with or without him. And I started to create these things instead of wishing he was there helping me put the kids to bed. I just had the routine and we would have dinner. And if he was there, great. If not, we would still go on with dinner. And then we would have our routine. And I started to live life instead of this expectation or desire or wish
Mm.
that he was participating. I just decided to take with what I could have and not expect or want anything more. And I did my own personal work where I worked on my self-love and who I was and what mattered to me and I became happier on my own and I didn't know that in that process he had begun his affair in that process.
So during that process of separation, he was already having an affair. Am I getting it right? 6 months
Yes.
prior.
Yes.
Did you know the person he was having an affair with?
Not personally. I was never actually allowed to meet her when I would try or when there were things they're just it was the strange part about it because he had his own real estate business. He had his own like brokerage that he created, and she worked at that um, office and worked with him. And before she kind of came into the picture, I was very much involved in a lot of the things. We'd have Christmas parties, we'd have office things, and I'd come to the office with the kids sometimes, and we were just all kind of a part of things. But it came to this part where I'd be like, hey, can we come see you at work for lunch? And he'd say, oh, I have an appointment. I'm not going to be there. Or things like that. And it just slowly started to get where I wasn't really involved in things. So I never actually face to face met her. Because every time I tried, they're just either she was gone or I wasn't there or whatever. And he was hiding most of the times that they were doing things together.
How did you find out that she was the girl?
So this is how I found out. It was through social media because they had their business that they would post on, both of them. And they started posting pictures and videos of just the two of them, in the car together, in the office, making these videos and pictures for their business, but it was just the two of them. But every time I would bring it up, he would deny it all and call me crazy, tell me I was like I was exaggerating, I was making something up, like that I needed to just stop and chill out. But I couldn't shake it and it kept happening. And I just kept like getting these, it just kind of like these things kind of happened. And then one time there was this one particular picture that was posted on Thanksgiving, because we had had a fight about the fact that he said he was going to something and wouldn't come be with the family. And it turned out to be a lie because I would see things on social media that he was just out partying instead of coming with the family. So when I saw this one picture, I retaliated and I posted it on my social media and I kind of called them out saying, what's going on here? And he got really, really angry with me. It was actually one of the like scariest times. He came home and just berated me and told me that I was awful person for doing that and that um he's going to ruin me. He's going to take the kids and the money in the house and I was going to be left with nothing and that I was nothing and I can't drag other people into our life and just made me feel awful. So I reached out to her and I apologized for doing what I did. I sent her an email apologizing that I brought her into my issues. And she came back saying, "Oh, no, no, I've only ever respected you. No worries. It's totally fine." And the whole time she had been sleeping with him. So it was, anyway,
You
that could
said
go on
that
and I could go on forever.
you guys went through counseling and you try to work on the marriage, but you also said that you got some news because didn't she have a husband or somebody she was involved with that sent you information when you thought that you
Mhm,
guys were trying to get back together? What happened
mhm.
on that?
So this whole time, during all this time that was happening, so when I sent that email to her, apologizing, and she sent back, her husband later on had found that email. So he found my email address through that, and he actually emailed me first and said, "Are they having an affair?" And I simply said, "I have no idea." He adamantly denies it. Anytime I bring it up, he just shuts it down. He says it's not happening. But I'm suspicious, but I have no proof. I have no idea.
Mm.
And it was then shortly after that he got a hold of her phone and got into her stuff and found their secret messages and videos and pictures and how they've been interacting for the last 9 months. And I actually am very grateful because we both said at the end of the email, if we ever found anything, we would tell each other and, kind of like let the other know. And so he sent me the evidence, but I still to this day am so grateful because he would send me some of the messages. But like, for instance, I could see the bottom half of a picture was sent, but I don't know what was on the picture. But then I saw the responses. And those responses were really, really hard to read. But even though I knew there was a picture, I'm very grateful that I didn't know what that picture was. And I didn't have that burned into my memory. So I was very grateful for how he shared it with me. So he sent me a bunch of emails, and all it said was, "Here's the proof." And when I received that, I then went to my husband and said, "What is this?" And it took him an hour before he could finally admit. And his admission was just, "I'm sorry. I screwed up. I'm sorry. I screwed up." Um,
What do you
Because
think?
all the time I was like, what happened? What's going on? And he's just like, nothing, nothing. He couldn't admit that there was anything going on.
Did he ever admit, even when you guys divorced, did he ever admit his reasons? And more importantly, did the woman who told you nothing went on, did she come to you and say, I fucked my relationship up too, I guess.
Yeah. So she honestly, no, I didn't really get, he wouldn't deny that he did it, but he never, I mean, he'd answer questions when I'd press him, but he would try to side skirt. And we went to like the counseling once all this news came out that he like agreed, because that was like one of my contingencies that we needed to go see somebody, and work through this because we couldn't do it without that. And it just, I don't know how to really explain, but it was just more that he would only tell me what he thought he needed to, just enough to like appease me, but he always kind of kept a little bit. And then I'd find out later, and then I'd find evidence of something, and then he'd have to like, okay, yeah, that's happening. Like nothing was ever disclosed to me. Everything was always discovered. I found everything every time.
How long did affair? When did you decide? When you was going to counseling, was the
Hmm.
affair still going on with him and her?
Yeah. But the thing is the counseling didn't last very long. He kind of refused to go after a few when we went together because he felt attacked. And so he's like, I don't like it. I don't want to go. So we didn't have anything for a long time. And then I just kept saying, I'm going to move forward with divorce because I had filed for divorce, but I did it without lawyers. Like I was just doing it and I was hoping that it wouldn't have to go to the next step and the next step. But I kept pushing forward and kept pushing forward, and he kept trying to find ways to make me stop.
What about the guy that you were talking to? How did that part end? Did he work with you and give you some guidance? Because I mean, you guys now have a common thread. His wife is sleeping with your husband, and your husband sleeping with his wife. But you're trying to reconcile your relationship. What was he trying to do with his? Because they're still having an affair.
So
Did you
he,
share with him that they're still messing around?
so he actually, as soon as the affair broke, he filed for divorce. So he ended their marriage, like, or
Okay.
was working on it, ending the marriage. Him and I was very cautious not to have a relationship with him. I didn't want to build this like strange trauma bond
Okay.
with something and create an inappropriate relationship. So we did not communicate or meet or do anything outside of like necessity.
Mhm.
So he kind of did his own thing. And then it was for me later when I was trying, like, I was reconciled, that I would reach out and be like, do you know if there's still something happening? Or he would say, there was like occasionally he'd be like, just so you know, she told me that this is still going on or something like that. And so those are the ways, that was about all the communication that we had um, at
When
that
you
point.
when you went to therapy, a lot of people do feel attacked in the therapy sessions, but what were some of the things that you remember in the therapy that made him feel attacked? And did he ever give reason for why it even took place? I mean, because you're dealing with 14 years of marriage, and I get the fact that
Mhm.
you guys were young, but I mean, the bottom line is there's a reason for, even if it may not make any sense logically. There was a reason. Was he bored with you? Was he bored with the relationship? I mean, what in therapy did these things surface, and did it more impact you or did it impact him more?
I think it impacted me. Yes, there was something that I discovered that I was not aware of. My ex-husband had a very, I don't know, deep porn addiction that he had been having since he was 13 years old that I was not aware of. So this is where I have a very personal opinion about it, but I feel like he was very addicted to pornography and masturbation. So he was self-soothing and self-satisfying, and I was not necessary. And I could go in for a really long time about some things, but the biggest
You,
damage that
you know
happens
that?
with,
Didn't you know that
yeah,
for 14 years of marriage? I mean, was he not intimately involved with you?
um, because we were, but I had to initiate, and he turned me down far more than I ever turned him down. So there were many times that he told me he was too tired, or he wasn't in the mood, or he didn't want to. Um, So and I had a very healthy sex drive. Um, I enjoyed and wanted to be intimate in that way. And so that was always a hardship, but I longed for it because that was the one place that I did feel like somewhat connected. I used sex as a way that he finally loved me. He could see me. He could, have that. So I longed for that. And I made it to believe that that's what it was. If he slept with me, then we were closer. We were more connected. But to him, it was it was completely, he didn't know how to connect with me. It was just a form of pleasure for him.
Before we wrap up, this is how do you move on? I mean, not how do you move on? Let me rephrase this. You've been through so much. You have three girls and a son by him.
Hmm.
Clearly, you're not trying to destroy the relationship that you guys have with your children, but you have three
No.
girls. That's their
Yep.
father. How do you get past the betrayal and still put together a cohesive family unit with three girls and a son and still try to look past the betrayal that happened to you that crippled the family?
Yeah. It's harder sometimes. There's some days that are harder than others. But I will share with you the reason what helped me to actually finally let go, because I didn't believe in divorce. I, I believe with my heart in forgiveness and redemption, and that nothing is too far gone that you can't come back from. I just believe that with my heart. So I was ready to fight for our marriage forever. Like I was like, I will do this. Like I made promises to this man. I come from a religious background. Like there's more to this. And it was my family. And I was fighting for my kids. And it was actually, I looked at my oldest daughter at the time was 12. It's gonna make me cry. So excuse me. But I looked at her and I thought, if this was her, what would I want her to do? And I would want her to love herself enough to not be abused and to know and to take care of her.
Mhm.
And if I wanted that for her, I needed to do that for me. So I took it into myself that I needed to be the best version of myself and to heal and work on me if I ever wanted my girls to do that for themselves. So I wanted to set that example.
How is the relationship with the father in his girls and his son?
Between him and the kids,
Yeah.
I mean, he's very much involved. He's there. They know as they've gotten older, they kind of know what they can get from him and what they can't. They're not going to get emotional support from him, but he is there for them. He goes to their games, he drives them around, he takes care of them, and he's provides for them. And they love him. And I'm glad that they do, and I want them to.
Out of all of this pain that you've gone through, the the will to fight, and then finally wake up and by looking at what you would want, what's best for your kids, kind of shifted your way of
Mhm.
thinking. you started an organization. Well, you started a business called Courage
Mhm.
in Betrayal. What is this? What is this about? Why start this?
Well, it was because I felt stuck. I remember feeling so empty. And honestly, the best way I could describe is betrayal. It flips your whole world upside down and it questions everything. Everything you knew, everything that you thought was real, then becomes all in question. What have I been making up in my head? I thought he loved me. I thought we were a family. I thought things were important. And I came to find out that that wasn't true. What else do I think that's not true? So your whole world gets flipped upside down, and you have to start sorting through every piece of your life of like, is this true? Or is this something I've created? Is this true? Is this true? But you're doing it in the dark. The lights have been turned off, and you're trying to sort through it in the dark. And it's so hard. Um, but I did a lot of work and a lot of healing and a lot of self help and working on myself after the divorce, during the divorce, like everything. And I discovered peace. And it took me a while to come, but I no longer feel my pain. I can remember my pain, but I don't carry it with me every day. And I just want to help everybody that is now in the darkness, trying to sort through their life to find light again, to know that there's hope, to get through this
Mhm.
and not get stuck in it. Because a lot of people get stuck. They don't ever really find the light and they carry this pain through the rest of their life. And I want people to find joy again. There's the difference between surviving and thriving.
Mhm.
And I want to get people out of surviving and into actually living. And that's become like my mission and my goal in life is just trying to get that.
You've been doing this for a year now. What have you noticed? How hard is it to reevaluate? And let's get real. It's not just um, a feminine thing. Men also get emotionally scarred and caught up in this triangle of
Yep.
betrayal. How widespread is it since you started this organization? And more importantly, how difficult is it for individuals? Because this seems like it needs a lot of therapy is involved in it, and more importantly, um, not only therapy, but really just how hard is it for people to move on?
It's hard because what betrayal actually does is it tears open our wounds that are inside of us that we've had for our whole life.
Trauma?
And it's all the wounds that we don't want to address.
Yeah.
It's all the things that we're shameful about, we're avoiding. It's the hard things that we don't want to go there, that we've shoved down really deep, but betrayal rips them open. And it makes us feel very exposed. So we try to cover it up, but it becomes this place. And the way to heal from betrayal is not what we think it is. We so often think if they change, if they make it right, if they hurt us, they should be the one to heal us. But the best way I was described to it when I went through my recovery was I had a therapist describe it. It's like they shot you with a gun. Um, it's going to hurt no matter where you're shot. It always is going to hurt. But they can't heal. They can't do surgery. They can't heal that bullet wound. We have to do that. And so we've been hit, and now we have to investigate and navigate of saying, this is where it hurts. This is where the problem is. This is where I need surgery. No one else can see that but us. But we have learned through our life to avoid those areas that need help. So it's really hard because now we have to face and look directly at the pain that we haven't wanted to look at our whole life. And we have to stare it in the face and say, this is where this is. So that's why it's hard. And that's why most people don't recover because it requires you. to stare at things that are hard to do. For example, I had to look at the fact that I was codependent on him. I needed him to validate me to feel like I had value. I needed him to tell me that I was worthy. Otherwise, I felt worthless. And I fed that machine by my actions, by my behavior. So I had to learn that for myself. And that's not easy to do, to
Mm,
like look in and say, oh, I contributed to this. I fed this machine of what ultimately hurt me. I was the one that like fed the monster.
wow,
So
that's deep. How can the viewer? That's deep, and thank you so much for taking the time to share such a impactful story of that beast mindset. I see you're moving forward. You definitely uh, are doing something with Courage and Betrayal, the organization to help individuals at least give a resource for them. How can the viewers reach out to you to learn more about Courage and Betrayal and the road to recovery?
yeah, the best way is honestly social media. Instagram is the one that's most active. So that's the best way through Instagram. It's Courage and Betrayal. I also have Facebook and TikTok. Those are things. I do have a website as well, but just to reach through social media is one of the best ways that you can just reach out and follow or message me and we can talk and figure out what's the next step. Um,
And we're gonna have you come back because I understand through a little bird, you got a book coming out. We'll be able to talk about that. When can we expect to see the book out and have you back on and talk about that book?
Oh, that's a good question. That is going to make me have like a deadline, which I probably need. I have written it, but now I need to publish it and yet like go through that process of it. But I wrote it all down, so it's has that piece of it. But my goal is to say within this next year, that it will be out there for the world.
Leave the viewers with that beast mindset. You've been through so much, and now you know you found peace. The journey. Lead the viewers with something that keeps you going. Now you learned a lot, but leave them with something.
So my one of my favorite things to go from is it sounds silly, but I love to lean on Newton's law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For how low, painful, and awful something is, you have the potential for the equal and opposite amount of joy, happiness, and peace. And that's worth fighting for. So, like, it's never too late. And like a phoenix that rises from the ashes, tragedy can be beautiful if you let it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.